Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's noon, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to this webinar and thank you for taking time to attend and for your interest in this topic. My name is Kathy Leggett. My position is Future Ready Iowa Policy Advisor at Iowa Workforce Development, and I'm one of your contact individuals for this grant opportunity. So a couple of things before we just get right into the grant information. I want to make a few introductions. And so Ryan, I'm going to have you say hello and introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ryan Page, Department of Human Services in the Child Care Policy Bureau.
Great, thanks, Ryan. I'm going to kind of facilitate us through a lot of the presentation today, but my colleague Ryan is, as she said, with DHS. We are working together on this this opportunity. This opportunity. Sorry about that. So she's here as somebody who can answer questions too, and will provide input as well. We're also expecting David Steen, who is with Iowa Workforce Development Legal Department, just because he's a great asset to answer some questions sometimes that come up. As maybe you can imagine, there are some very unique situations that occur, and especially in this really chaotic and challenging time. And so we get a lot of questions, which are great questions, but sometimes we have to ask other stakeholders and experts to weigh in so that we can figure out what we can do within the guidelines of both the state guidance for this grant and the federal guidance, because our DHS money is coming through federal dollars. So, so as much as we would love to just do whatever we want with it, we can't. There are certainly rules that we have to follow. So please understand that as well, but we definitely are trying to do everything we can within those guidelines to provide support on this really important issue. I see Victor is connected. So I'm going to just pause a second here and have Victor introduce himself. Victor, can you just introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Victor Kennedy. I'm the CFO for Iowa Workforce Development.
Thanks, Victor. And Victor is joining us. Victor gets the wonderful pleasure of processing a lot of the receipts and documentation that comes in for grant awardees. So he is a key person in helping answer questions too, and trying to provide guidance. So Victor, thanks for being here. I want everybody to know that we're fortunate to have you with us too. And David, I'm doing introductions, and so I'm going to say, can you introduce yourself as well?
Good afternoon. I'm David Steen. I'm General Counsel for Iowa Workforce Development, and I've been involved with helping to advise on these grants as well. So I'll be happy to help answer questions this afternoon.
Okay, thanks. And then I just also want to acknowledge our Iowa Works Communications folks, and Ben and Greg. They're both on here to help us make sure that hopefully this goes smoothly, and they'll help facilitate the comment sections, especially questions as we get to those. We're going to try and keep track and have time to answer those at the end. And so otherwise, what I did want to let you know is the slide deck that we're going through will be posted on the Child Care Challenge, the Future Ready Iowa Child Care Challenge grant page after we finish here. So you don't have to take notes. You can have access to those. Additionally, we are recording this, and we'll get a link up on that page too. If you have to step out, or a colleague or someone wants to look at this. And then one more for additional questions, because we do have a lot of, I'm going to share some questions that have already come in, and we'll try and go through our best answers to those. But if we don't get through all the questions, please post your questions in the chat. We'll gather those, and then we'll post those additional questions and answers again on the Child Care Challenge webpage as soon as we can get them answered. So you can keep checking there. And then Ryan's contact information, as well as mine, is the last slide in this deck. So you can feel free to email us or reach out, and we'll do what we can to, again, provide information. So one more time, I want to thank everybody. Just an FYI, we have about 40 people now. We had over 400 people who registered for this. So there's a lot of interest, which I, again, am really grateful for. And again, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and take a second here to share my screen, and we'll start going through some slides. I do want to prep you guys. I talk fast and I usually go through information pretty quickly. So please, again, they'll be up, the slides will be up, and reach out to any of us for more information or put something in the chat. So let's see. Okay. Okay, I think we should be ready to go. Ryan, can you share, can you see my slides? Okay, awesome. Guys, okay, thanks. I'm getting it on occasion. I'm getting something that says my internet is unstable, so hopefully you don't lose me, but just an FYI. So here we go. I think, hang on, trying to get this to advance. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. So first of all, what I'm going to start with is who is eligible, the eligible applicants for this grant. And most, really the information, the majority of information that I'm covering is in the notice of funding, the full document, which is up on our website and is also in IowaWorkforceDevelopment.gov. But just as a review, eligible applicants include businesses, nonprofits, and consortiums, which you can see with the asterisk there, which is a group of 2 or more employers or businesses, one of which must be a private employer. So it's pretty wide open. IWD, we encourage applicants to really cultivate partnerships. That's one of the reasons this grant exists, is to really work to engage employers with childcare providers and centers and homes to work together to meet the challenges that we have with childcare as a workforce issue. So we really do like to see those partnerships cultivated. I think that we can achieve a lot more when we do that. And just a note for the employer, for the Child Care Challenge Matching Grant, if an employer is not the lead applicant, then you do need to have a letter of commitment from an employer as a key partner, because the Child Care Challenge piece of the grant is part of the Employer Innovation Fund, which is part of Future Ready Iowa, again, focused on workforce. So just know that that is a piece that needs to be submitted with the Child Care Challenge portion of the grant. Now, after I go through these basics, then I'm going to kind of divide up the 2 pieces. So hopefully, I know it's confusing, but we're going to try and do our best to separate them out and give you the needed information. So just some basics. Our grant deadline is December 10th. You do have to do an electronic application, and that has to be submitted through IowaGrants.gov. And we have directions and whatnot, but we can't accept applications that are emailed to us or anything like that. So if you want to apply, we'll go over some Iowa grant stuff, but get in there as soon as possible, because if you don't have an account now, you need to get approved. We'll do it as quickly as we can, but I would just encourage you to get in there sooner rather than later. The total amount available right now with this opportunity is $10 million. The maximum amount that can be requested is for our IWD matching grant Child Care Challenge is $250,000. For the DHS funding, which does not require a match, is $750,000. And then we do have some questions. Can we apply if we already received funds from similar grants? The answer to that is yes. You will find in the application a document or a place where you need to list the previous grants that you have received, whether through the DHS funding or the Child Care Challenge funding, how much, what grant, and some details about that, because we do, and we'll be tracking it from our side too. We do need to know that because there are just a lot of things to weigh and consider, but certainly would encourage you to apply even if you still have needs. So here's where we go into these 2 separate funding sources. And please know, our intent honestly is to make this easier so that you can access these dollars with one grant application. And so I'm going to try, as I said, to funnel this out a little bit for you. The 10 million is there are 3 million that are for from Iowa Workforce Development, which is funded through the state legislature for the Iowa Child Care Challenge Grant. That's a matching grant, and I'm going to try and refer to those as IWD funds, just to separate this out. $7 million is coming from the Department of Human Services, and that is through funds that came from the federal government. Ryan, I'm not sure if this is a
ARPA.
Recovery Act fund or
Yeah, the
ARPA?
American Rescue
Yeah,
Plan.
okay. Perfect. And so that's where those funds are coming from. And so while there are similar things, there are a few differences, but we're gonna do it with this one grant application. So what I'm going to do first is talk about the Child Care Challenge Grant. So this is the IWD grant portion of it, and you can apply for both. You can apply for just one, or you can apply for both in this application. So just know that you have that flexibility depending on what your needs are and what's available. So this one, the IWD Child Care Challenge Grant, is to encourage and enable businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations and consortiums to establish local child care facilities and to increase the availability of quality, affordable childcare for working Iowans. So that's kind of the basic there. Here, the priority we're looking for is to increase the number of slots available, supporting the infrastructure that's needed so that we can grow the number of spaces we have for centers to take children so while their parents are working, basically. And so this is a competitive grant process, and it's to support these community and regional initiatives. Eligible expenses are for new construction of a child care facility, rehab of an existing structure as a child care facility, or retrofitting and retropurposing as a child care facility. So this is very much infrastructure. This is where your major construction or purchase of land, those type of things can come in this Child Care Challenge Grant. Those would be some examples of the things that this funding can pay for that the other pot of DHS money cannot cover. So, and please know we're here to help you after this, just if you have questions about that. So these are the purpose for the Child Care Challenge Grant. As I said, the Child Care Challenge Grant is a matching grant. So I'm going to spend a few slides on that because it's important to make sure that makes sense. So the grants for this, we can the funding for this can match private or employer dollars for projects that you're applying to support. So matching, and I want to make sure that it's clear, this is not a reimbursement grant. It's not that you're spending X number of your dollars and then you're requesting reimbursement from the state. It's a matching grant. So it's the state of Iowa saying, if you have $50,000 to put towards some things you need for this, and you meet the criteria and you are awarded, then the state will match that $50,000. So in total, you have $100,000 to complete that. And so the state dollars are in addition to the private dollars that you're putting up as part of this grant application. So what can be used to meet the organization match portion of the grant? We can match private dollars and employer dollars. We cannot match state or federal funds. So when you're making your budget and your proposal and you're providing documentation that shows that you have these funds available, just know that they cannot be state or federal funds. Those cannot be matched. For the Child Care Challenge Grant, we can also match in-kind funds or equal to dollar amount. You can use that as your match as well. We know that labor and materials are a big part of these projects. And so if you have, as a community projects or regional projects, you have employers and organizations that have said, you know what, we're going to donate all of the labor to do the electric, or we're going to donate all of the material needed for the basic wall construction. That can be used to request a match also. That's the in-kind. And what you need to do is have the organizations that are doing that submit an estimate of what the cost is, what they would value that is as their in-kind donation, so that we have that documentation. one caveat here is that administration expenses cannot be used. This is labor and materials. So you can't use somebody's time to organize the project or something like that to submit as your match. An example, there's construction crew labor costs that can be used. The other key thing to remember is this grant is designed to match funds or in-kind donations that are available but not spent yet. So these are things, this isn't something that somebody did for you last year worth 50,000 and you're going to use that as your match. This is available, not spent funding, basically. So in the grant, as part of the grant application, if you're applying for this type of funding, you need to prove the existence of and security of the funds. And that is a document that you're going to include with your grant as an attachment. And it just basically shares here that official, and this is in the notice of funding as well, you need an official statement from an FDIC insured financial institution. And if you don't have that, you can have an affidavit from a certified public accountant. That has to be part of this grant. So please don't send in your grant and apply for this fund without putting that attachment in. And then just as a note for the way it works, if you are awarded, then you need to spend your private funds first. You spend those, you send that documentation into IWD. Once that's approved, then IWD sends you a check for your match. And then you use that for the rest of what you proposed in your project. So this grant timeline, let's see. So we just have here that you provide, so if you are granted, once you spend your grant or your private funds or in kind, then you provide that proof to IWD that it's been expended in full. It's not like, here's 10,000, I want my 10,000, here's another 10,000, I want 10,000. You spend all your private and then you request all the granted funds. And then you'll get your check from the state. If you're awarded this grant, you have through June 30th, 2022 to spend your private match. And then submit us a request that documents that. Then you have 12 months. So then you have until June 30th of 2023 to spend the state dollars. And trust me, we are here to work through that process with you. We'll do timelines, we'll do reminders, we'll help you make sure that you can manage that project successfully. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop with the Child Care Challenge grant. And I'm going to go over to the DHS grant. And that's the 7 million that's available. And then Ryan, do you want to go through this, the purpose and whatnot of these funds?
Sure, I can do that. So, okay, so for DHS grants, if anyone was familiar with the Investing in Iowa's Childcare, some of how the money can be spent is the same. Our grant purpose, a couple different things that we want to do to prioritize where some of this funding goes. So we know that some people have gotten a challenge grant or got the IICC, but we had supply chain issues or increases in labor costs. So if you already had some approved grants and we're needing to just get you over the hump of a little bit more expenditure, then we want to help get those folks off the ground. We also want to target those that have gotten no funding at all. If you have been in a community with a feasibility study that's done that actually identifies that your area is an identified need for childcare, that is something that we would also be prioritizing, as well as an identified childcare desert at that attached link there. Next slide.
I'm trying to go, sorry. I don't know what happens that I can't get that to go. There.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how it
Um,
happened, but yeah.
So allowable grant expenses, those are going to be anything around health and safety for children in care, furniture, play equipment. It might be appliances, if you're needing to do, if you're needing a refrigerator or a stove or those types of things, washer dryers, minor renovation. If you're looking at sprinkler systems, radon mitigation, perhaps you have roof repair that's needed, plumbing to make sure that you have appropriate toilet and sink ratios for children. Those are all things that are going to be eligible expenses. Office equipment, so that you can do the administrative side of childcare. Any adaptations for children with disabilities, that might be adding handrails, it might be widening a door. And then we do also allow advertising to parents and potential employees as an approved cost.
Great.
So for those non-allowables, ongoing operating expenses, so utilities, insurance, rent, those types of things are not allowable expenditures. Purchase of land or property that is federally prohibited. We cannot purchase land, property, have major renovation. And so those would be structural foundations or extensive alteration of the facility. So if we're looking at a church basement that's only ever been a church basement and is maybe kind of unfinished, we can't come in and completely restructure the space for the function or purpose. So, and then basically when we're thinking about structural changes, we're also talking about load-bearing walls. So once we start removing or adding load-bearing walls, that becomes a definition of major renovation. Food and beverage, so kind of those consumable materials, but we will allow, of course, some of the paper products that would be related to COVID mitigation, health and safety stuff. Non-essential kitchen applicants or electronics. So, sometimes we have requests for those above and beyond type of tools and resources. Those are not going to be permissible. So you don't, need to have necessarily an air fryer or a electronic whiteboard in a classroom. We're also, of course, iPads make sense for staffing purposes, but then they're not developmentally appropriate for children and screen time and things like that. So balancing the health and safety and developmental needs of children. Professional development resources, so travel expenses, training costs, tuition, those are not items not recommended due to health and safety or child development. So swings, actually not recommended. Walkers, trampolines, pools, carpeting, those are all developmentally not allowable expenditures. That's Kathy, back to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Okay, so just to talk a little more about the administrative expenses, the administrative expenses are not allowable as grant expenses, or to be used, as I said before, as matching funds. So paying staff wages, those things are not allowable. And even project coordinator for the construction of a project, which I know takes time and people have to find the resources to do that, that is not an allowable expense for a match or something that we can cover with the grant dollars. So I think one thing I wanted to mention after Ryan went through her slides, so just again, like the major construction and those things, those are things the Child Care Challenge can fund. We can also fund the other things like what Ryan mentioned, but we really want to make the best use of money. We want to try and fit the needs in whichever place it's best to fit it so that we can make the most of every dollar that we get. So again, to just review a few timelines, the applications are due the 10th. You'll be notified, I'd say within a few weeks. I'm not going to put a date on this because it does take, we really do take time to, and we'll do this as quickly as we can, but, to look through and say, where is this best funded? How can we do this if possible? Those type of things, working with IWD, with DHS to get this hopefully all awarded in the best way possible. So it'll be a few weeks. You're always welcome to email, or give a call and ask if you haven't heard. So just to review those timelines, because we want to make sure if you're going to do an application to the best of your knowledge that you can meet the timeline. IWD awards, your private dollars, if you're awarded, they must be spent by June 30th, 2022. State dollar matches must be requested by, I'm saying July 15th, Victor. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. Since they have to June 30th, I think we've talked about mid-July to make sure that they get their request in. I'm going to give you a second if you want to say anything about that.
Yeah, that's a good timeline. So we can
Okay.
get everything in for the state fiscal year. So yeah, July 15th is good.
Perfect, thank you. And then you have those state dollars that you receive, you need to spend by June 30th, 2023, and then provide us with the receipts and documentation that you've done that. The DHS dollars, you have to be able to request those by July 5th. Oops, sorry, is that right? Did I do that right, Ryan? Sorry. July 15th?
We're following your same exact
30th.
timeline.
Yeah, okay, so same timeline, yes. So request by July 15th and then spend in the same timeline. So those are again your timelines. And then now I wanted to go through a few questions and answers. And actually I've taken these from now in your application, which we'll spend a little time on shortly. You in the notice of funding and the appendices, you have a lot of information. Appendix B is your general FAQ document that's really basic questions. So what I did is took some of the questions that we have received from people interested and just went ahead and shared them. And so some of you may recognize your questions here, and you're probably just seeing the answer for the first time because we want to vet them through everybody possible to make sure that we get the right answer. So this is an example of what will be posted on the website. So just first, does my childcare have to be a registered home or licensed center to qualify for this grant? And then if so, do I have time to do that before the deadline? So basically, yes, it needs to be either registered, licensed, or in the process. And on our grant application, we have a place where you can check and share that information. If an awardee is in the process, DHS is going to work with you to make sure that you successfully complete that prior to the dollars awarded. If you have not yet raised matching funds, can you just apply for the DHS funds? Yes. So if you don't have the matching funds, now just remember that major construction and those type of things cannot be covered by those DHS funds. But if you have other things that can be, then absolutely. And you can do the same thing on the other side. If you're just starting and you're purchasing land or you're just getting a building going, you can just do the IWD if you choose to, or you can do both. The project period for IWD, it says, was addressed in the NOFO. And this person asked about the project period for DHS, which we just said is going to be the same. It's going to follow the same timeline. So we've just added some information there. The question was asked, difference between rehabilitation of an existing structure. This is for the IWD award, and retrofitting. So I've provided a little additional information there, basically focusing that rehab is like we have a church or a church basement, or we have an old school that's not being used, and we're going to change it completely into a new child care center. Retrofitting and repurposing is more referring to it we're a child care center here, but we just got we're going to turn our extra room into another space for kids or something like that. So that's just kind of a basic definition for you. Somebody asked for clarification for minor remodeling, and I think we covered that a little bit, but their specific question was they need to replace door and windows. Not sure if that qualifies. And so again, the minor remodeling is just doesn't, one of the basic things you can do is are you moving load-bearing walls? Are you taking them down, or are you putting them up? That is not minor remodeling. So that's a child care challenge, an IWD request. But here, door and window replacements, as you can see, as long as they don't have to do with that moving of load-bearing walls. Now, somebody asked about a fire alarm system. Can that be included? And we said yes. I have a slide later that gives you a little more information. Again, to clarify that, but certainly you can make that request. Somebody here asking about the potential that they, might get some donated space, and could this be an outdoor play area? And yes, you can certainly include this in an application for consideration. Expanding services. This post, they have not had architectural drawings done or construction estimates. Can the drawings be an eligible expense? And this is something that is eligible, can be considered in the IWD funds. So that's the matching grant, not the DHS funds. This one, basically, question was, he or she, whoever's this question is trying to see if they can apply for the grant to help cover outstanding costs from a project that was new, was really trying to and fitting the criteria that we're looking for. But still, again, as Ryan alluded, supply chain issues and inflation. I've heard from many people who were granted awards in the last period just saying, gosh, even the quotes we put in and were awarded are now way out of the line. They've increased so much. And so the basic thing is that we will give consideration to applicants who have eligible expenses that are related to this, and that were expensed. I don't have a time frame. I can't say, a certain date, but we will give consideration to those. The ability to fund that, though, is going to depend on many things, just like our funding always does. The number of applications we receive, the funds that are available, the scoring of the application, the priority, how many do we have that meet that top priority versus any others? So what I have to stress is that there is no guarantee, but we recognize that the inflation and the supply chain issues have really added another level of challenge and barriers and difficulties to everything that you're trying to do. And within the guidelines that we have, and then depending on all those other things, we will do what we can to consider that. And so I want to encourage you to apply, but again, with no guarantee. Now, somebody else asked if there was an infrastructure update. The project had started and this is their completion date. Can they still apply? The answer is yes. Here, somebody received funding, but many of the costs were not covered. Now, I'm not sure if not covered is because they're not eligible or because they just didn't get enough funding. So I think that with this, you have to look back at and I gave some examples here. Are these on the list of eligible expenses, or are they specifically not eligible? So you can certainly apply again, even if you received that funding. I think if you have further questions about that, just let us know. Here's one, they built a new center. It's done and moved in, but then, timelines and everything else. Can we apply for a grant again for previously incurred expenses in the last 6 months? Again, I can't say. I encourage you to apply if you feel like you fit the grant guidelines. Consideration will be given to all applicants. But again, the ability to fund, whether we can go back and do that, if at all possible, I'm saying we would love to. I just don't know if we can, but I don't want to say don't apply because there are just so many things. So that's the best way I can answer that question. Unfortunately, it's not a clear yes or no, but hopefully you can weigh that with the time it takes to do an application. Let's see. So this one is can they get funded if they're physically located in Omaha, but serving Iowans, and unfortunately that cannot happen. Only Iowa-based facilities can utilize the funding that we have available. The rubric where it says the scoring rubric, which is Appendix C, says that you can be disqualified because you can be disqualified if you don't provide the documentation that you need for a child care challenge fund, for the matching fund. That can disqualify you because if we get a lot of applicants, we go through and that is required. And if you don't have a required piece of an application, that can disqualify you. But if you are only applying for DHS funds, then that doesn't matter. It's not applicable. New centers versus existing centers who need enhancements. Again, we are accepting applications from both new and existing centers. And we will score them following the rubric, and we'll apply any flexibility that we can. Again, if you can make the time, I encourage you to apply. So here I just tried to do a little bit more about, because we have received numerous questions about eligible expenses pertaining to, as I said, just the high price increases, the timelines and things that have occurred, all of which we understand in this really crazy time. So what I want to reiterate is typically grants are only for eligible expenses that are incurred immediately after the award notification and through the grant period. That is a standard practice. But again, due to supply chain inflation and other things that have happened, we encourage you to apply, outline the eligible expenses, and clearly explain the challenges. I mean, your best, is if we can understand in the budget narrative what you're trying to accomplish and what has affected it. But we do not guarantee funding for any requests. There are a variety of things we have to prioritize, and I listed some of those again there too. So I know, again, it's not a clear-cut answer, but it is the best that we can offer, I think, at this time. So then I'm going to go quickly to how to apply. Let's see. Okay. It's an online application, as I said. You've got to register in Iowa Grants. Appendix D, which is on the website, gives you instructions if you're a new user to Iowa Grants. The website is there. And I highly encourage you to use the appendices that are provided when you're doing your application. Appendix A is the grant guidance. This is going to provide you with pretty much step-by-step when we're asking a question in the online application, what we want you to put in there. And I'm flipping to this just to show you, for example, this is last year, so ignore the date, but for example, this is what's on the Child Care Challenge webpage. If you haven't been there, you'll see a link to each of those appendices, to the full notice, and to an example of the budget spreadsheet. So Appendix A will walk you through what we're looking for. Appendix B is your FAQ. This is an example of what Appendix A will look like. What general information do you need? What do you do after that? Here's an example of Appendix C. This is last year's, so ignore those numbers, go to the one, but it'll lay out what we're looking for and how many points each part is worth. So again, those are there for your assistance and guidance. This is what IowaGrants.gov looks like. And this is where, and then you'll register as a new user if you don't already have an account. If you have problems with that, you can reach out to us too. I have great help here with getting people into the system. And if you have registered and you're waiting and you haven't received a confirmation yet, again, reach out and we'll get it processed as soon as possible. The other thing I wanted to say is budget documents. So there is a budget narrative in the application and then a budget spreadsheet in the application. There is a template that you can download and use, and we'd like you to use that template and put it in as an attachment. The budget narrative is the place for you to describe and explain what you're doing. Here's your budget, and this is what, and this is, and if you need to do the why because of supply chain issues or things like that. The spreadsheet is one that you can go and fill in. I really encourage you to look at the directions of the spreadsheet, because it will provide you additional information as to, is this equipment, or is this supplies, or is this, what are we putting this in? Now on the spreadsheet, there is a place for your private match. And then there's a place for what you're requesting. Obviously, if you are only requesting DHS funds, then you don't fill out the private match part. So if you're requesting IWD funds, you're going to put in your private match and explain that, and then you're going to put in what you're requesting as the state match for that. And that's how we'll know that. And then if it's DHS, you're just going to put in what you're requesting and the description of that. Again, if you have questions, just let us know. And so that is where, first, before we go to any questions that somebody might have, I want to say, stop here and say, Ryan, David, and Victor, if you guys have anything you want to add to that, maybe notes that something I missed or wasn't very clear on or anything, please, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and jump in now.
Okay, I think you got it covered from my perspective.
Okay, great. Ryan, I see you shaking your head. You feel okay about at least okay. And Victor?
Yep, I think you have everything covered.
Okay, great. So now I think we can see if Ben or Greg, do you guys have questions in the chat that you can read out to us, or it's just, it's hard for me to multitask. So I'm asking if you guys are able to do that.
I have a document I can share with you. There's 46 that we have so far.
Questions? Okay,
Yes.
well, let's try to do some of them. So are you gonna, how do we share that?
Kathy,
Yeah.
hey, it's Ryan. I'll go ahead and start reading them to you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank
Welcome.
you.
Yep. So here's the first one. I won't read who they're from, but I'll just read the question. Would roof replacement be allowable?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Good short answer. Ryan to Ryan right there. Good one. Here we go. Question number 2. Is moving to a bigger place to establish a bigger daycare possible?
Yes.
Good one there. This one's a little longer. We have tile floors that are needed replaced due to the cracking in the floors and not able to be waxed anymore. Can we use the DHS grant for this replacement of the floors with new?
So I would say yes, but also go back to what Kathy had mentioned around prioritization and basically saying we can't guarantee necessarily funding to anyone's specific intention of the grant being expansion and increase in slots, with the recognition that we do have an existing infrastructure of childcare facilities that may need some financial support as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, good. That's probably more of a common question than we think of, I bet.
Yeah.
So good question there. Would grading the backyard and retaining and a retaining wall be covered?
Can't say for sure on the DHS side. I think I'd have to probably go look into that a little bit further. Kathy?
Yeah, I would say for the child challenge side, that would, the highest priority of that would be, is it going to allow you to increase capacity to serve children? And again, that's, and like I said, we're trying to balance everything that's going on within the rules that we have. So I can't give it a for sure yes, but as I said, you know, I think then you get to make a decision, is it worth my effort to try or not? So I wish I could be more clear, but that's.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to make sure everybody understands that we'll have a panel of reviewers of the applications, and you know, there may be something, DHS has more money available than Iowa Workforce Development does. As Kathy said, we want to expand these dollars as far as they can go. If somebody applies for something and it's on the wrong budget form, but the other side goes, you know what, we can pay for that part. We're going to be working together to assure that we are maximizing our efforts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the moral of the story there is go ahead and it's worth
That's
a
what
shot.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Worth the shot.
But that's my,
Yeah.
that's my opinion, but yes.
absolutely. I think you're a little bit of uncharted territory, so give it a wing. That's what I
Yeah.
suggest that too. Okay, this kind of ties into it. What about architecture expenses?
Yes, those would be considered eligible expenses in the IWD funds, the Child Care Challenge. So those are ones you're going to have a private match for, but they definitely are eligible and can be considered.
Okay, please provide a definition of an approved feasibility study.
We will we'll be able to get that probably like in writing.
Okay. So check back to on the website, because we
Mhm.
will follow up and post the questions we have on here and any additional ones with answers on our website.
Yeah, and I think that's really key. Make sure you guys, everybody's put questions in. It looks like we have 200 and some odd participants. Just make sure to keep toggling between those websites. I can't stress that enough. So, okay. Will the DHS portion be similar to the ICC with the 35% reimbursement rate for child development home providers?
So it's going to be similar in that if it's 100% dedicated stuff for the child development home operations, then we can fully fund. If it's something that's also, if it's a new refrigerator for the house that the child development home is in, and the person is also living and residing there, then we would be doing that 35% more than likely.
Okay. Looks like the next one wasn't so much a question, just somebody acknowledging they're here. Thank you for joining us. Are we getting stipends again?
So I'm assuming that you're talking to me. So childcare, the stipends are done, but Governor Reynolds announced a couple weeks ago that we've released about $200 million in stabilization grants. And in the upcoming weeks, just hopefully 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have some more targeted information that we will be sending out to you on exactly what that looks like and how you'll be able to apply for those.
Great.
Okay. I didn't get on the meeting till the beginning of DHS Grant. Can you give me information on the Child Care Challenge, or can I watch the recording? Yeah, I believe we'll have the recording posted on the website. I'll go ahead and answer that one, but I defer to the experts here. Ryan, Kathy.
Nope,
if you have a-
agreed. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so just go back and check that one out, Kim. That'll be on there. Is there a format for the budget worksheet portion of the application, and what must be included?
Yes, there is. There's a template, and it's in a PDF on the website, because I guess that's the only way we can post it. But in IowaWorkforceDevelopment.gov, it is an actual spreadsheet that you should be able to download and fill in. And so it should guide you. Basically, there's some basic information, your organization, some of that relevant information for finance, but then it's a line item where you fill in a brief description of what it is, and then you put how much it is, and then it should total, fingers crossed, but double check it for sure. So that, and then under the directions, the tab, so at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll see the template, but then if you tab, there's directions that help you know, this is what we consider equipment, this is what we consider this is what we consider this. So it is, I think it's pretty intuitive, but definitely if you can't find it or you have any challenges, contact me.
Okay. We need to take out plastered walls and replace with drywall, so somewhat minor remodeling in the play area.
It shouldn't be a problem unless it's load bearing.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if that'll be a common question too. Please share website to get application again. Thanks. Yeah, maybe we could put that in type that in.
Yeah.
And just so everybody knows, I'll read, we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to read until about 1, and then we'll go ahead and answer the rest and post those. Okay, just in the interest of everybody's time. And thank you again for all the questions. Looks like each question is posing another question. So we'll get that website on there, Kathy. Can playgrounds or the purchase of transportation be covered by either?
Yes, but so with playground equipment, DHS would be looking, is it a health and safety need for needing to replace, or is it to expand capacity? With transportation, we start looking at, is that so that you can expand children so that you can take them to and from school? Or is this an opportunity that, you've got a van that's broken down and you are not going to be able to take kids to and from school without that? So those are the types of things that we're going to be looking at if you were to choose to apply for that.
Gotcha. Okay. Can land donation be used as matching value / funds?
Yes, for the Child Care Challenge grant. Yes.
Okay. Does this cover parking lot if you need to expand?
DHS funding cannot cover parking lot expansion. We can cover parking lot repair.
Okay.
Child Care Challenge, I'm not sure. It would really depend on, I suppose to some extent the case you make, and then does that affect your ability to serve more children?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you can get creative in your application on that. one.
Yeah.
David, are you gonna say something on that one? Sorry.
I was gonna say, given who the clientele is, children, I mean, increasing parking spaces is not really gonna have any effect on increasing slots available for children to be at a daycare. So the likelihood is that that's not gonna be a successful grant application anyway, but likely not something we can cover to begin with.
Okay,
Thanks, David.
thanks, David. If we have applied previously and received, can I just basically copy, it's a good question, copy the same application for their narrative information and update the amounts needed?
And sorry, was it, they applied previously and they did not receive, or they did receive?
Let me reread that one. If we have
Okay.
applied previously and received, can I just basically copy the same application for the narrative information and update the amounts needed?
I think, okay, I'll take a stab at this. I think there's a lot you can copy and paste, but what I would also say is the applicant format or the application format has changed some, because we tried to make it a little more concise and specific. So I think you still have to go through and see what information can we, like maybe some background information or stuff. But the other question is going to be, if you applied and received, then my guess is that you're applying for additional funds because of infrastructure, or so I kind of feel like it isn't going to be exactly the same. So I do think you're going to have to do some tweaking to it to have it be considered. But that's my best response right now.
Hey, Kathy, I'm gonna jump in. My recommendation would be to just complete a whole new application because of everything that's changed on there. And you don't want to get dinged if you don't answer a question correctly or
Yeah.
grading criteria that we have that might not have been present on the prior application.
Yeah, agreed. Very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
fair enough. I will say, Paige, that as somebody who tries to be extremely efficient, I really appreciate the question. So I'll leave it at that. I appreciate what you're trying to say in there, though.
Yeah.
What about replacing doors and windows for new handicapped accessible? Good question.
Yes.
Yeah. Great question there. That was a pretty simple one, I think, too. Yeah, adding a bathroom to a room, challenge award, right? Question mark. So I think the question is, can we add a bathroom and get that under the challenge fund option?
Under the IWD
Yes,
funding?
you could definitely do it in the IWD funding.
Yeah.
Depending again, is that increasing? I mean, and again, it's not all like we said, but it's certainly going to depend on other criteria. But is that something that's covered in the DHS funds as well, Ryan?
Yeah, it could be. It just kind of depends on what the structural needs are of the space to do that.
Okay, got it. Does any of this cover any cost of low income because your state pay is so high? I had an increase to employee pay to keep them. I'm sorry, I had to increase employee pay to keep them.
So if this is for DHS, if there is an increase in slots, or this is a new program needing to hire staff, DHS does have a formula where we can provide like 3 months of staffing costs for new hires to accommodate increasing capacity. But we don't have available funding for ongoing expenses such as salaries or rent or utilities.
Yeah.
And
And
keep
that
in
would-
mind, stabilization funding opportunities are going to be coming out. And though the intent of stabilization grants is around covering operational costs, and we know staffing is a huge component of that.
Yep, perfect. And yeah, that would not be an IWD childcare challenge eligible opportunity. And this is this one place too that I just want to make a pitch. I'm assuming the majority of you have checked out the childcare task force recommendations. They were posted about 2 weeks ago now, and just so you know, and take a look if you haven't. I really encourage you to take a look at these and to share with your local legislators where you would prioritize efforts, to be made around and because they're addressing staffing regulations, low income fees and other things in the Child Care Challenge grants. So, or in the task force recommendations. So I do encourage you to take a look at that and really, share with local legislators what you believe needs to happen.
Okay, next one, my foundation wall is cracked and needs replaced. Will that be covered? If did we answer this one already?
From the foundation, I don't think would be a
Okay, sorry.
DHS
Yeah,
eligible.
won't be, go ahead, Ryan, say that again. I talked over you, sorry.
I don't think that it would be an eligible expenditure under major renovation language.
Okay. Breaking ground on a new facility in the spring, but won't be done and open to finish licensing until fall. Can I still use these grants even though my license won't be approved until after July 15th?
Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say yes. There's a place to indicate that on your application. And so that is possible. But what has happened in those situations is we work with DHS to follow through and ensure that that happens and then disperse the funds. I think that's how we've done it in the past, Brian.
Yeah, so in the past, we have approved the application itself, but then held the funds because for federal funding eligibility, the program has to be an eligible provider, meaning licensed or registered in the state of Iowa.
Okay. Okay. Kind of a similar question here, but I want to make sure I'm reading it. Replacing a driveway.
So I would have to understand how that relates to a regulatory need or a health and safety need to perhaps fund a portion of that, if that happens to be a child development home question.
Yeah, and as David stated a little bit ago, our attorney, he kind of, he brought up a good point on that too with the parking lot. So just FYI there. What program area of interest do I select when registering on IowaGrants.gov?
Future Ready Iowa.
There you go.
And if you've already done it and you didn't select that, don't worry, because typically we'll go in and get anyone approved. If you're still waiting or something, just let me know.
Okay. If we are doing an addition and large scale renovation, can we request some expense from DHS, i.e. fire alarm system appliances and the construction expenses from IWD?
I think that makes sense.
Yes.
I think from that information, I would say yes. And back to what we kind of shared before is when these we want you to provide as much information as you can. So it's easy when our review team looks at it, as easy as possible for them to kind of understand what you're requesting and the relevant pieces of that. But then we also discuss internally, okay, is this, I can't fund this. Can you fund this? Or I can't, so we on our end try to do that too, but I think that would be a yes.
Okay, so I'm going to read two more. So just a quick FYI here, Ben, Greg, if you don't mind making sure we get these questions obviously printed out and sent on to Kathy and Ryan, and then we'll also make sure the recording is uploaded on the website within the next 24 hours, if that's fair for everybody. And
yes.
So two more questions. If we want to update our rooms and get a playground, would this be covered by the grant?
Potentially.
Possible.
It's going to depend on if it's needing minimum health and safety due to a regulatory issue, or if it's an expansion.
Okay. And one more, do we have to own the space being remodeled to qualify for the funding?
Kathy, what kind of verification, if anything, is needed for, like, if I rent a space?
David, can you weigh in on that? I feel like this came up last time and they don't have to own it, but I want you to weigh in.
You're on mute, David.
David.
Sorry about that. That is the classic error there. No, I don't think there's any reason they have to own it. We would probably want to see some sort of proof as to what their lease arrangement is, or some reason to believe there's still going to be a childcare facility there throughout the term of the award and beyond. But no, there doesn't need to be an ownership interest in the actual facility necessarily. It just depends on what the project is. I mean, we would need to see specifically how whatever is being proposed is going to be able to increase slots available in the state. And I mean, if we're talking about a lot of modifications to a building you don't own, that may or may not speak to that. So
Yep.
it's really going to be project
Yep.
dependent. But no, I don't think we can say as a rule, you must own the facility or your project does not qualify.
Okay. So that concludes it. So
Thanks.
Ryan, Kathy, I turn it back over to you guys.
I think that's a wrap. Thanks for doing such a great job, Ryan, in facilitating those questions. And thanks to, I want to again thank David and Ryan and Victor for joining us, and Ben and Greg for helping us make this go, and everybody for your questions and your participation and just for the work you do. We know this is an incredibly important issue in Iowa, and so thanks for what you're doing, and continue to reach out if you have questions. All right, bye.